FM News Talk 97.1.
On demand audio. Talk lines are open now at 314-969-9797 or toll free at 866-455-9797. You're listening to The Dana Show.
You got to turn around.
Turn around. Go another way.
Turn around.
Turn around.
DC,
Excuse me, sir,
Occupy
I'm sorry,
DC.
but you have no power right now. And your son can't save me.
Stop.
I'm just telling you.
This driver has a toddler in the back seat.
All I'm trying to do is go home.
Yes, a little bit.
I mean, seriously, guys. Can we use some common sense, please?
Yeah, they weren't going to let him. They weren't going to let him go. And you just don't go and protest by standing in front of vehicles. It's becoming kind of a problem for cities across the country. It began in Richmond, Virginia, especially. Not just. I'm not talking about just some of the violence that we've seen in Occupy Oakland or D.C. or some of the rape cases in Cleveland, but I'm also talking about the massive difference in treatment that we've witnessed in cities like Richmond and Atlanta. And some groups are now getting legal about it. In Richmond, the Richmond Tea Party filed suit against the city for what they said was unfair treatment. Part of their accusations were that they were forced to pay thousands of dollars for insurance and permits, and they abided by the law, whereas the Occupy movement did not. And the same case went for Atlanta, Georgia. The Atlanta Tea Party is making the same case as Richmond did. And now here in the case of St. Louis, a lot of criticism is starting to bubble up, not just from professional groups, but also from members in the grassroots movement as well. And we told you last week how occupiers have been using electricity downtown. We know that they didn't have permits. We know that they don't have insurance. And the mayor issued a statement on Friday discussing how the city had offered them a free permit, which was refused. And joining me on the line right now, Jeff Rainford is Mayor Francis Slade's chief of staff, and he's going to give us a little bit more insight on these issues from the perspective of the mayor's office. Jeff, good afternoon. Thanks for joining me.
Hey, Dana, thanks for having me.
So the mayor has he's weighing into this battle. He really had a pretty lengthy blog post at mayorslade.com where he said that there's been a rising tide of complaints and that the occupiers know that they can't stay forever. And just today, the Occupy group released its own statement disputing what Mayor Slade had said. Is Mayor Slade going to come to the point where there's going to have to be an eviction of this group from Keener Plaza?
Well, we're actually hoping that's not the case. We're hoping that the Occupy people choose to follow the law on their own, and that there's not a confrontation, and if there's a confrontation, that they are peaceful. There are different situations in different cities, and you really can't say because of what happened in Atlanta or Richmond results in unfair behavior in St. Louis. The fact of the matter is the reason that we've been patient with this group would be the same reason we would be patient if they were the Tea Party, and that is the First Amendment in this country is sacred, and that's why we've been patient with them. The second issue is, up until recently, they weren't really hurting anybody. And the third is there is an element to, we thought, hey, let's not create a confrontation that's going to lead to violence and that sort of thing. But the second issue, the issue that they aren't really hurting anybody and, no harm, no foul, is the one that's changed more recently. We are starting to get complaints. There are downtown people who work downtown, people who live downtown, and people who have businesses downtown who say, hey, they're monopolizing the space. We want to be able to use the space. You can't live in parks and that sort of thing. And, and so now that it's gone from a no harm, no foul to people are complaining, and as far as they're concerned, it is doing some harm. We've now changed our tact, which is, hey, you got to follow the law.
So what do you say when you hear accusations from various people that say, well, look, for instance, the St. Louis Tea Party had to pay a $500, I think it was like a $500 security deposit. There was another several $100s for insurance, and that was just for one event. And it ended up totaling over a period of time, several thousands of dollars just to use public spaces for insurance purposes, permit purposes. And I know that there was one instance where the city had threatened to shut down the event because the group lost insurance the night before and had to scramble to get it. Whereas you have the mayor offering the occupiers a free permit. And I know that I don't know of any other group that's ever been offered a free permit before. Do you think that there's a disparity in the treatment?
We often, no, I don't know if it's often, but from time to time we do waive the fees, usually for nonprofit groups that can't afford the fees. A couple of you've sort of thrown a lot in there, so I may forget some of what you've thrown in, so let me try to address it. First, neither the mayor nor I have never been involved with the Tea Party folks. If it ever got to a point that it came to our attention that they were not able to express their First Amendment rights because of the bureaucracy of City Hall, we certainly would intervene to make sure that their First Amendment rights weren't taken away. What happened with the Tea Party, I'm sure, is that they were told what the law is, and they decided that, hey, we're law-abiding citizens and we're going to abide by the law. This particular group believes that their First Amendment rights trump local ordinances, and they think as part of their message that breaking the law or civil disobedience or whatever is part of the routine. I don't think that the Tea Party, comes to the table with the same tactics. But if for some reason they did, and they felt like their First Amendment rights to express political speech were in danger, and it came to our attention, whether we agree or disagree with them or agree or disagree with the Occupy people, we would treat them both the same way. I just think they would come at it from a different point of view. My impression is that the Tea Party people would prefer, don't use civil disobedience and breaking the law as kind of part of their tactics. And my impression is that the Occupy people believe that civil disobedience is part of what they do, and that the First Amendment is, trumps local ordinances.
So the mayor's office
kind of come at it from different points of view.
Right.
But each of them, the First Amendment rights of the Tea Party are just as sacred as the First Amendment rights of the
mayor's
occupiers,
office,
whether they're right or wrong.
So the mayor's office is of the opinion that the occupiers are breaking the law by occupying a public space without proper permits and insurance.
They have two main issues. Number one is they put structures up in Keener Plaza, and that violates the regulations of Keener Plaza in our parks. And number two, we have a 10 o'clock curfew for all of our parks under ordinance, and they're violating that as well.
Now, who would be liable if there is an accident there and a suit would be filed? Would the city be liable for any accident because the group does not have insurance at this point?
I guess that's a legal question, but, we have, under state law, it's really difficult to sue. If you're doing your activity on public property, it's very difficult under state law to collect anything from cities in the first place.
So does the mayor's office, do they realize what precedents that this sets, though? If people want to break the law and they want to cite the fact that we don't really know whether or not the occupiers couldn't afford the permit, because I don't think that they ever approached the mayor's office and made that case. Is that going to give other groups who want to use that same tactic a free pass?
If it's related to the First Amendment, and I was another group and I didn't have two nickels to rub together, I'd probably make the same argument. If it's something other than the First Amendment, if it's just like, well, I don't have a place to stay, so I want to throw an encampment up in a park, or other situations. Let me kind of give you our sort of a background on our philosophical point of view here, which is really, there are some government people who are in government who sort of say, hey, government has to get involved in every aspect of people's lives, and government has to solve every single problem.
Right.
We don't take that point of view. What we really would like to see more of is people, solving their own disputes, and people, figuring out a way to get along.
Right.
And sometimes that's not possible. But I gave a couple of, for instances, last week. There was an old guy who sells pretzels down on Jameson, and doesn't have a permit. We knew he didn't have a permit, but people love buying their pretzels from him, so we just leave the guy alone. Another guy, sensing that the first guy's making a lot of money, comes in and starts selling pretzels a block away. So the neighbors like the first guy, so they call the city and say, hey, come shut this guy down. He's selling pretzels without a permit. Well, they're both selling pretzels without permits, so we kept saying to people until we finally worked out a solution, why don't you let the marketplace figure it out rather than asking government to come in and solve it. And it's the same thing with our neighborhoods. I mean, in the old days, if the little old lady's grass grew too high, you went and cut it yourself.
I don't mean to interrupt, but for the sake of timeliness, I want it. So how long are they going to be allowed to break the law before the mayor's office acts?
We're going to try to work out an accommodation with them in which they are not breaking the law, and if we fail to do so, then we're going to enforce the law. It'll be shorter rather than longer.
Okay. Jeff Rainford, the Chief of Staff with Mayor Francis Slay. I appreciate you coming on and giving us the perspective from the mayor's office.
Hey, ask me again, Dana. It was fun.
All right. Thanks so much. Take care. We have your questions coming back. Keep it here.